and helping me out with this webinar. So tonight, the topics we're going to cover, first thing I want to go over, which is a big source of concern for a lot of parents, is test cancellations in 2020, how they should register for the next official exams, changes to testing sites, whether or not students are going to be able to take the tests online, what's going to happen with regard to the changes in the testing and how that's going to affect college application deadlines, the additional optional essay that's going to be on the Common App related to COVID-19, and I'm going to talk a little bit about schools going test optional and what that means for everybody. So some of the, most of this everybody's well aware, and I think this is a big reason why a lot of people are probably here, is the cancellations for both the SAT and the ACT. SAT canceled all 3 administrations since the beginning of the coronavirus, starting with March 14th, May 2nd, June 6th. ACT canceled the April test, and they didn't, this is a misconception some parents have. I was talking to a mom just this week about it. The June 13th test wasn't canceled. There were centers across the country that did offer the exam, but there weren't any centers close to home, obviously, that administered it. So everybody that lives around here, they weren't able to take the June 13th exam, but there were kids across the country that were able to take that test. So that's important for parents to realize. When will students be able to take the SAT? So starting this August, College Board is offering a test every month. They also, until December, they've also made mention that they will add an exam in January if there's demand for it. Like if, let's say, the August test is canceled and the September test is canceled, then they're very likely going to add another exam in January. This will, if there aren't any cancellations between August and December, students will have 5 options from now until the end of 2020 to take an SAT. These are the upcoming dates. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention in the beginning of the webinar is that I am going to make a recording of this webinar, so there will be a copy of it. If you can leave your name and email address in the chat, then I'll be able to send you the link. Also, if you have questions throughout the webinar, you can ask them in chat, and then Corey is going to help me answer those questions as we go. So if I don't answer any of your questions throughout the webinar, just feel free to write it in the chat, and I will try to get to it at the end if we have time. So these are our upcoming dates in August, September, October, November, December, with the registration deadlines. And then when will students be able to take the ACT? ACT's goal, just like SAT's goal, is to try to offer as many opportunities for students to take the test as possible. The July ACT was a newer test. It's only been around for a couple of years, and in the past, it wasn't offered in New York. So students had to go to New Jersey or Connecticut if they wanted to take the July exam. But now with the cancellations, ACT is trying to be as accommodating as they can be, and so they've added a testing centers in New York for the July exam. They've also added makeup dates for the June and the July exams as well. So these are your upcoming dates starting in July. We have the July 18th test, and then you can see the makeup date is the week after, and then September 12th, October 24th, and December 12th. So we basically have 4 more opportunities to take the ACT between now and the end of 2020. Now, how should students register for the next exams? If a student's test center was canceled for June, this is with regard to the ACT, then ACT does not automatically re-register that student. The student's going to have to do that on their own. Students should follow the instructions that ACT would have emailed to them when they got the email that their test center was canceled. and they can do a free reschedule from the June to the July test date. Most students should be able to do this rescheduling through their student web accounts. If there are any problems, ACT is very, very good with customer care, very good with helping students online, helping parents over the phone, register online. So if you have any problems whatsoever, I definitely recommend giving them a call. When the test centers were canceled in June, ACT was definitely getting inundated with phone calls. And so a lot of parents were not able to get through. That's definitely calmed down. I've spoken to a few parents this week and they've been able to get through to ACT. However, if you are having a hard time, well, this is the, let me just go back for a second. This is the phone number. And these are the hours that you can contact ACT. And if you can't get through them via phone, then you could always email them. So I gave you instructions here where you can go to actstudent.org, click on contact at the top of the homepage, and then you'll see where you can email them. And they're pretty good about getting back to you via email as well. That's another way you can get in touch with them. Now, in terms of SAT, if a student already registered for the June test, which was canceled, as you know, then she can transfer that registration to any of the upcoming dates. There's no fee if you transfer before July 31st. After July 31st, then it's a $30 fee. If a student canceled the June exam, said they don't want to take the SAT anymore, there's no interest in taking the SAT, then they should get a full refund, registration refund. If you're unable to contact College Board, if you're unable to make a change, you should contact College Board directly. This is their support time and phone number to get in touch with them. And again, like I mentioned before, I'm recording this, so if you can't write this down right now, then you'll get a copy. If you reach out to me, I'll give you a copy of the webinar. If you can't reach College Board by phone, then you can email them. So what I recommend you do is search in Google SAT student and parent inquiry form, and you can complete the required information. And this is, again, another way to contact them through email if you can't get in touch with them by phone. I think this is great if students don't already follow ACT or College Board on social media. They do post a lot of helpful information, updates, changes to the exam, and helpful study tips. So it's definitely good to follow them. I put their Twitter handles and Instagram so that you can always add them and follow them. Tips when registering. So my recommendation is to definitely register as soon as you can. Testing sites for the SAT, both in August and September, are filling very quickly, as is the as is the ACT in July. It's filling very quickly. So I recommend that you register as soon as you can. You cannot register for the fall ACT exams until July. Typically, the registration date is in the middle of July, but I recommend starting to check as soon as July 1st, because things aren't always exactly as they have been in the past, obviously, because of all these interruptions and disruptions. So I would recommend starting as soon as you can, checking the website, seeing if you can register. I will try to inform all of my parents in the program as soon as I find out when you can register for the fall ACTs. Don't give up also. There's very high interest in students wanting to register, so that may lead to interruptions and delays online, but just be patient, keep at it, because the persistent ones are the ones that get through. Find a testing center near you if you can, but you might not be able to, especially for the July exam. If you're unable to find a seat in your preferred area, then try to find a different location, hopefully on the island. You can choose to just take it in September, or continue to check back regularly. I was just talking to a mom, I believe it was yesterday, and there was a test center that just opened in Roslyn for the July exam. She saw that in the morning, and then she waited in the afternoon, and it was already full. So keep checking to see if locations are opening near you, and I recommend you check every morning. because especially if you want to take a test close to home. Another idea, and this is for my very ambitious families, is to do some research and try to find a school that is administering a test outside of our area. It may well be more likely of a place that will be offering the test in July. So one of the things you could do is you can do some research using, you should Google the ACT test center locator, and then that'll take you to a part of the ACT website where you can do a search by state. You could be more specific, but you could do a search by state. For example, you could put in Pennsylvania, and then it'll show you all these different schools. And then you click on each area, and then it'll show you which tests they've administered or plan to administer. What I would recommend is if you see that they administered a June test, then it is very, very likely that they're going to be administering the July exam. And so you can try that route. And what some parents are doing are they're making like a little mini vacation out of it. And some of these locations may be 6 hours away, 4 hours away. So you can maybe go there a couple of days early, stay for a couple of days, stay in a hotel. I have found in the past, I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and I have found in the past that when the February ACT used to be out of state, students who took it out of state tended to do better. They were more relaxed because they weren't in the bubble of Long Island, and they didn't feel the pressure of the kids around them. And so they were more relaxed, maybe staying in the hotel, going in the pool, something like that calmed them down. But it definitely could be an option. You don't have to go scrambling, running around, driving 7 hours away, but it's definitely an idea, something that I wanted to share.
Hey, Michelle, one question came in, and then I just wanted to add something to that.
Yes.
So you mentioned like the ACT test locator website. Is that something that you suggest if parents are trying to stay on top of this, they refresh, or is there like a setting where like you can get like a notification on your phone or something when like a specific location pops up? Like how does that, talking to some of your parents, how does that usually work?
Usually it requires effort. Yeah. Usually you won't get an update alert. You can refresh that page, and then you'll see if centers were added. Especially when you go to your student account, you can see where locations are in your area, but it's not something where they would give you alerts when they do make updates. That's a good question.
Cool. And then one other thing I just want to touch on, because we do have some lacrosse recruits on the call here, is, if you do take a test outside of Long Island, make, a recruiting trip out of it. So we have a lot of athletes who they've never really done that before just yet, but if they do, something we'll suggest is, hey, go a day early, if you're heading out to Harrisburg in Pennsylvania and catch, drive through 3 schools on the way, maybe set up a visit with a specific college coach on the way. Even though not every college campus is open right now, you can still drive through them and get that feel of, the school, the size, the location, just all those things, the commute, obviously. So make a little, recruiting trip out of it. If you can talk to a coach, great. If not, just hit up and see some schools, because it'll really help you. We call that covering ground in our program when we tell our families to just go out there and go visit schools. It's so important. It really is. Like, you only get so much in that digital experience. When you drive through a campus, you just get that feel. And I'm sure your students, Michelle, can just, when they talk to you about when they commit to a school or get into a school and they've been there, they just like, it feels like home. And that's really important to our kids. So.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good point. And like you said, even if you're not able to take a tour on campus, you can tell a lot about a school and whether or not it's even a fit for you by where it's located. If it's in a big city or if it's, very, very rural, what kind of stores are around, does it have a Starbucks? All of those things, definitely helpful. That's a really good point that you bring up. Were there any more questions? Corey, are you able to add people that are waiting, if there's anybody waiting? Do you know what I mean? Like in the waiting room?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I don't have that ability. You want to take a quick peek in the waiting room just to see if anyone's lingering?
Yes. Let me do that quickly.
There might be someone hanging out there. And then as a reminder, everyone on the call, we're going to be doing a part 2 with Michelle as well. Shoot us your email so we can keep you in the loop on part 2. We'll keep you guys in the loop again on a recording for this, all this great updated information as it relates to test prep and enrichment, you know, what Michele does, which is awesome and just really great free information. So shoot that to us so we can stay in touch with you guys throughout this.
All right, great. Thank you, Corey. Okay, so I just added a couple more people. All right, so changes to testing sites due to COVID-19. So ACT and SAT are going to follow CDC recommended guidelines. They're making a lot of efforts to have more testing centers so they could spread students out. There typically weren't that many colleges that were offering ACT testing centers, but now they're definitely adding more and more colleges to the list, so that they can have kids be at least 6 feet apart and increase seating capacity. They are also making sure they're requiring students wear masks and bring hand sanitizers. They're also making sure that everybody who's obviously working there and checking the students in, and the proctors, all of those individuals are also going to be wearing masks. Students obviously have to temporarily remove their masks for full facial confirmation, but that's only temporary. To add on to this, one of the things I highly recommend to students is that they practice with a mask on, practice tests with a mask on. So we just started allowing students to come back to our office this past weekend. And so students were in the room, 6 feet apart, of course, and wearing a mask. And I followed up this week and asked them, you know, was it okay? Were you uncomfortable? And everybody said, you get used to it. But I do recommend, because it is different from what you're used to, I definitely recommend that when you are going to take a couple more practice tests between now and the July exam, to do so with a mask, so that you don't do it for the first time on the official test date. Because whether you're taking the test July, August, from now until December, my bet is that they're going to require that students wear masks every time. So it's good to get used to. There's also no standby testing allowed, because due to social distancing requirements, you can't do standby testing. Very quickly, that just basically means that if you pass the late registration deadline, you would be able to register as a standby and go to a test center, and if someone's a no-show, or if there's actually a space for you, then you can take the test. If you don't get a spot, then they give you a full refund. They're not even allowing you to do that this time. So my advice is just don't register too late. Just make sure that you get your registrations in definitely by the late registration deadline. Really quickly, to backtrack with the safety first slide, I think it's right here. Yeah, for student screening, they're going to have you sign a form that basically says that you aren't sick, you don't have a fever, you haven't been in contact with anybody that has symptoms in the past 14 days. If a child, for whatever reason, doesn't pass, if they have a fever or if they've been sick, then they get a full refund on their registration that they could use towards the next test. Taking the exams online. So College Board originally said that they would offer tests online if schools were not back in session in the fall, but they have recently said that they're not doing that now. So they feel that they cannot guarantee 3 hours of uninterrupted video quality internet for each student. There were a lot of glitches with the online AP exams, which I'm sure a lot of students listening in have either experienced themselves or know of people who have had problems. And so because of that, College Board is not offering online testing. They did say, however, that they are still making a lot of efforts to have that be a possibility in the future, but it won't be anytime in 2020. ACT, as of now, will be offering online testing options. They're looking at late fall, early winter. So possibly the October exam or the December exam. They are considering ways to address access and equity issues, because there are issues about students not having access to the internet or having issues with their Wi-Fi, and so they're looking into that. My thinking is that if they do have online testing, they're most likely going to be administering it at a testing site, but offering it as an option for students. College application deadlines. So the early action and early decision application deadlines are usually in November, and regular decision is anywhere between January and March. What I have heard from all of the research and people I've been speaking to, that most colleges are being very flexible with application requirements, either extending deadlines or allowing students to submit scores after the deadline. And I think that's important for students to be aware of, because I know kids are under a lot of stress right now. with regard to all of this, and when can I take a test, and is it going to affect my applications? And from everything that I've been reading, colleges have been very aware and concerned, and making sure that kids understand that they will accommodate them as much as they possibly can, and are understanding that it's going to be difficult for you to take a test right away. It may be delayed, has been delayed. Changes to the college application. So, I mean, the essay, there's an additional essay on the Common App where students will have a dedicated space to elaborate on the impact of the pandemic, both personally and academically. The college application essay has always been very, very important to a student's portfolio. Now more than ever, with test cancellations, with possibly applying test optional, the college application essay is going to hold even more weight. And so this is just an additional essay that's going to be on the Common App. It is optional, so you don't have to fill this information in if you don't feel it pertains to you, but it's there if you do. There is a word limit for 250 words. And there's also a place where there's a detailed FAQ where you can add more information if you want to talk about illness, loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic, family obligations that shifted, maybe somebody in your house lost a job and that changed the dynamic. Maybe you had to work as a student, that changed the dynamic, maybe affected your performance in school. This is giving you an opportunity to write about that, which I think is helpful to a lot of kids. This is really briefly what the essay looks like, that you will see as an option on your Common App. And then finally, I want to quickly talk about some schools that are temporarily going test optional. So basically what test optional means is that the college university doesn't require an SAT or ACT score when you're applying. Test optional has been around for many, many years. But what we're seeing now with the cancellation of these exams is that more schools are going test optional temporarily for the 2021 students. Why are some schools test optional? It's pretty obvious that with high school closed and teaching remotely, and with students' lives disrupted, 2021 students are given this opportunity to apply without ACT or SAT results. This is a tiny list, but there are several schools that are going test optional. These are just some of these schools. There are many ways that you can look online. You can even go to your particular school's website that you're interested in, and you'll be able to find out if that school is going test optional or not. I want to quickly talk about the benefits of applying test optional and the troubles with applying test optional. So the benefits, students who may not have been able to apply to a certain school based on their ACT or SAT score can now apply and possibly be accepted. Students who did not have access to test prep or who were unable to take enough official tests will not be penalized. The common dialogue of all of these colleges in their reasoning for going test optional is that they don't want to add to the students' stress that they have already been under during this whole time period. Some kids deal with it better than others, but every student has experienced major interruptions and disruptions during this time, and they're trying to be as accommodating as they can. So it gives students an opportunity to apply to college even if they don't have the chance to take a test. The downsides of applying test optional: historically, ACT and SAT scores are very predictive of a student's success in college. And so without this standardized measure, it is difficult for admissions officers to assess a student's potential for success at their university. In addition to that, because of the schools closing, and a lot of schools had their own way of grading and teaching, colleges are going to have a hard time accurately evaluating students' grades. So that adds to a difficulty of not having a test to show them your academic ability. Without a test score, your application is looked at more closely. So just because a school is test optional does not mean that they're more relaxed in their standards. They're just as rigorous for some schools, just as selective. And so they're going to be looking at your application more closely, which is important for students to realize. By not submitting a score, also your taking away your opportunity for merit money. Students in our program receive thousands of dollars from multiple schools every year based on their ACT score or SAT score. And without a score, you are eliminating that opportunity to earn merit money. It's also important to realize that historically, test optional schools, like I said, that's been around for a while, they 10% of the students actually don't send their scores. Now, granted, those numbers are going to be different now. But if students have a score, which again, not everywhere in the country are these tests canceled, then they're going to be sending those scores. And so it's important that if you have an opportunity to take the test, to prepare well for it and use that score, because it's going to make your application that much better for admissions officers. And finally, student athletes oftentimes need a score to qualify. And if they don't have a score to show coaches, it could hurt their opportunities of playing for that school. And then finally, I'll answer any questions. I have like 7 minutes left, but I am going to have another webinar in a couple of weeks that Corey and I will let you guys know about. This is quickly what I'm going to cover, ACT versus SAT, how students can best prepare for the exams, tips on starting or continuing your college search, the importance of your college application essay, and the new updates to the ACT that we're going to have in September. This is my contact information, like I said, and like Corey said, please leave your name and email address in the chat so that we can share this information with you, send you a copy of the webinar. Also, you can always call me, email me, reach out to me if you have any questions about anything that I talked about tonight, anything about the program. I'm more than happy to help, because I do love what I do. I do love helping students, and parents are a big part of this too. So I always want to help as much as I can. Corey, are there any questions? Because I'm watching the timer. I have like 6 minutes.
6 minutes. So maybe we can get a couple in. I guess let's start with the fact that it's an obvious stressful time for students, especially if you're, let's say, a junior in high school right now, a student athlete or not, and maybe you haven't even gotten your first exam in. What are some maybe one of the most common stressors that you experience with your students, and how do you kind of help them through it with your personal business at the Long Island Tutoring and Enrichment Center?
How do I help them through the stressors of what's going on with everything?
Yeah, I guess what's something that your students come in and say, hey, Michelle, this is really hard for me right now, and then your response is, okay, well, let's talk about it and let's come up with an action plan to kind of help you through it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, a lot of the students that are in my program have started in the beginning of junior year. Many of them started in the summer before junior year. And the goal was to be done the latest in June. And that's historically, I mean, I've been doing this over 20 years. It's typically when kids are done, by June. Yes, you have students that are taking it in July or in September, but most kids, their goal is to be done in June. And with all of these interruptions, it just prolongs everything. And my biggest concern always is that they don't feel burned, they don't get burnt out, they don't get overwhelmed. And so when I do have students tell me that they are starting to feel overwhelmed or stressed out, you don't want them to completely stop prepping, because you don't want to derail everything that you worked on for, so many months, but to scale it back. Maybe like my kids are meeting with me every other week. Maybe take a practice test every other week. So 1 week they're prepping, the other week they're taking a practice test. If you're prepping at home, maybe every other day, do some practice to keep prepping, but just not as intensely as you were when when this was before all of this interruption. But just to take it easy, to scale it back, but not completely, because then you don't want July to come and the test is available and then you're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And also be active, go outside, get your vitamin D, run around, be with your friends, socially distancing, of course, wear your masks, but get outside, go for walks, go for runs, go for bike rides, because that also emotionally and psychologically is very, very important, not just studying time.
And then one other question we just wanted to get in was minimum ACT score to get merit scholarship. Is there one?
That's a great question. That varies from school to school. There's a big misconception that you have to score in the 1 percentile to get merit money. You want to be smart about the colleges that you're applying to based on your ACT score. So for some schools, a 28 will award you thousands in merit money. I can say this though, in many schools, each point higher that you get, let's say on the ACT, between a 31 and a 32 could be thousands of dollars in merit money. So it really does depend on the college. What you want to do is take a look at the school's range of ACT scores and assess where you're at. And if you're on the high end or higher than the average, then you have a very good opportunity to get merit money. So there really isn't a standard score that you get to get merit money. Every college is different. So take a look at what their requirements are and base look at your score, and then you could assess it that way. It's a very good question.
Awesome. Yeah, I think let's maybe make that a wrap so we don't run out of time, get cut off. And thank you so much for everything, Michele.
Thank you, Corey. I really appreciate it.
And then lastly, again, if you want a recording of this, just drop your email in there, and we'll hopefully see everyone in a few weeks.
Yes.
With part 2.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Bye.